following is offered by Discerning Hearts, a 501c3 nonprofit Catholic apostolate dedicated to spiritual formation through the use of new media. To download this selection, or to browse hundreds of other programs, or to contribute to our mission with a charitable donation which is fully tax-deductible, visit our website at discerninghearts.com. Welcome to Inside the Pages, insights from today's most compelling authors. I'm your host, Kris McGregor, and I'm delighted to be joined by Anthony DeStefano. Anthony serves as the executive director of Priests for Life, an international not-for-profit pro-life organization based in New York, Texas, and Rome. He's also the author of the highly acclaimed best-selling A Travel Guide to Heaven. With Anthony DeStefano, we go inside the pages of 10 Prayers God Always Says Yes To, Divine Answers to Life's Most Difficult Problems, published by Doubleday Religion. Anthony, there have been over the last several years books that have been out there. I'm thinking, of course, of Prayer of Jabez or The Purpose-Driven Life or all these other different things. Well, I'm here to tell everybody out there, put them all aside because the book is out. 10 Prayers God Always Says Yes To. And I'm telling you, if you read this, all those others seem so watered down compared to what you have to offer.
Well, thank you for saying that. That's a great, great compliment.
I think you get right to the heart of the matter. Again, Anthony, you just seem to have this gift to be able to give us all those aha moments, all those things that we knew, but we didn't know we knew, and you have the ability to articulate it all.
Well, thank you. The one thing I want to do in my writing, whether I write 2 books or 5 books or 100 books, is I want to be able to write about theological, spiritual subjects which everyone can access. You know, there's too many books written by theologians for theologians, and there are some incredibly wonderful books, but they're just in the back of seminary libraries or they're buried somewhere where no one in the general public will ever read them. And how does that help? All of us are trying to get to heaven, you know. So therefore, there should be able to be some books that don't water down the faith, that don't compromise the faith, but at the same time are accessible to everybody.
I'm struck by the 10 prayers. How were you able to pick out 10?
Well, there are more than 10 prayers that God always says yes to. It's a nice round number. Everybody seems to like top 10 lists, and so it's a little bit of a gimmicky kind of a title there that you have to get past. But the idea is that it does grab people's, get people's attention. And all I've done really is taken promises that God has already made to us or commands that He's given to us in either the Old or the New Testament, and I've put them in the form of prayers. Because, God never makes a promise unless He delivers on the promise, and He never commands us to do anything unless He gives us the power to follow through on those commands. So all I've done is taken what He's already said He was going to do and put it into a question format, a prayer format.
I think that just taking a look at some of the questions, I think will pique people's interest. And again, you are so readable, but not in a dummy way. I just devour every chapter because I just think that as you open a question, say, for example, one of the prayers that you may ask is, show me that you exist. And you point out that is a question that God will always answer.
Always will answer that. People get confused. Because God is invisible, and He wants us to have faith in a being that's invisible, people think that He's just going to play hide and seek with us for the rest of our lives, as if God is some cosmic joke player. No, He wants us to have faith in something that's invisible. That's part of the faith test that we have to go through in life for many different reasons. But He's not some cosmic joker. He wants all of us to come to know Him. He wants all of us to communicate with Him. And communication isn't just a one-way street. It's not just us talking to God. It's God talking to us. So people go, round and round and round trying to prove God's existence, looking at all the fancy arguments, and all those arguments are all very valuable. But sometimes we forget that if we ask God a question instead of treating Him like a question, maybe we'll get a really quick answer from Him. And indeed, we do. When we say to God, I'm not sure that you exist. I'm having a lot of problems believing in you because of all the suffering in the world or what have you. Please give me some sign that you're up there. He's going to do that. He's going to show us that he's there. He's not going to appear in bodily form necessarily. You're not necessarily going to hear thunder and lightning, but something is going to happen in your life, something, and when that something happens, you're going to say, wow, that couldn't have come from me. Mm-hmm. I didn't do that. It had to be from God. All the signs are going to point to God, and our faith will grow.
And you point out a very important thing, and I've known this actually in the lives of a couple people I know, that when you ask God and say he does give you that big old bafo sign, you better watch out, because anybody, as you point out, that has been given something like that, much has been expected.
Yes, to whom much is given, much is expected. And if God does give you one of those road to Damascus experiences where he appears to you and you see, all kinds of things moving and miraculous occurrences, well, what he's essentially done when he's given you that kind of thing is he's almost removed the faith test from you. So he's going to put some other things in its place. You're going to have to prove your worth. I'm being a little loose with the language, but basically, yes, if God gives you something as great as some grand, tremendous miracle, he's going to expect more from you than someone like me or you who just has to go, chugging along in our life, struggling with our faith.
But generally, for the most of us, he will respond, but in a way that we will be able to identify fairly clearly as that it couldn't have come but from anyone but God.
To everyone. He'll respond to everyone. He wants all people to be saved, as St. Paul says. And so anyone who asks that question, God, show me that you exist, God's going to show them in some way, shape, or form. It's going to be, very subjective. It's not going to be something that's provable by scientific evidence, but it's going to be something that happens, and you're going to realize that it's not from you, it's from God, and it's going to enable you to take another step towards God. James says, if you take a step towards God, he'll take a step towards you.
Mm-hmm.
So that's what we're trying to get. That's the dynamic that this prayer is trying to arrive at.
I find your response to what prayer does God answer fastest? Boy, is that one true or not? I mean, wow.
Yeah, if you say to God, God, make me an instrument to help other people. Make me an instrument. He will answer that prayer so fast. I mean, somebody's going to show up on your doorstep practically, before the week is out, before the day is out. Something is going to happen. And I found that, and a few people already who have read the book have said, I prayed that prayer, and wow, it's fast acting, because so many spiritual laws feed into it. It's the law of love, the sacrificing yourself for other people, giving of yourself to other people. And when you tell God explicitly that you want to do that, he wants us to do that anyway, so he's going to say yes to that right away. And there are so many suffering people in the world. Mm-hmm. It's not like he has to part the Red Sea or anything to fulfill that command. All he's got to do to answer that prayer, all he's got to do is send a couple of suffering people your way.
That's right. And quite frankly, as Catholics, that's one of the things we're commissioned after every Mass, to go and love and serve the Lord. And that really kind of is our prayer that we say every time we have those encounters. And
every single day we have opportunities to fulfill that. Sadly, we don't always do that. Everybody's so caught up in their own lives and their own problems that they don't maybe go the extra mile and help all the people that come their way. And they don't realize that if they did do that, if they did allow God to make them into instruments to help, then God would begin doing things in their lives. If God's going, I say in the book, if God's going to use you as an instrument, he's going to make you the best possible instrument. God, before someone picks up a pencil to write something, they sharpen the pencil. And so God is the author of the universe. And if he's going to use you as an instrument, as a pencil to write, he's going to sharpen you. He's going to do things in your life. He's going to help you with your problems. He's going to, start making you holier. He's going to start bringing peace and order into your life. It's the what goes around, comes around philosophy in reverse.
I think that leads logically into that next question that you pose. God, outdo me in generosity. And I think that is an important one, especially for us in America, because sometimes I think we look at that, God is never outdone in his generosity if we step up first. But it's not about a gospel of prosperity.
No, it's not. And this is, this was maybe the most difficult chapter in the book to write, because there are so many landmines around this prayer. It can be misinterpreted in so many different ways. You'll turn on the TV and you'll see some of these name it and claim it preachers, with the Rolex watches and all the rest, and they think everybody should be a millionaire, and it's the unreservedly wonderful thing. And meanwhile, that contradicts the gospel, which shows very clearly that having a lot of money can be a very dangerous thing spiritually. And on the other hand, on the other end of the extreme, you have people who seem to just believe that money is bad, and going out to a nice dinner once in a while is a sinful, evil thing. So you have to walk the line. The truth is in the middle. The truth is that God does want us to have prosperity if we use that in a generous way. If we recognize that whatever material goods we have in life do not really ultimately belong to us, if we have something, we have to share it, in some way, because it all belongs ultimately to God.
And that's why, one of the reasons, of many reasons, why I love 10 prayers God always says yes to, Anthony, because you go back to the heart of the gospel and you help us to, again, see things that we already should know. And I think it's so important at a time right now where I know a lot of people, including a lot of Christians, a lot of Catholics, are buying a book called The Secret, because I think in this particular question, this particular prayer that you talk about, a lot of people like the idea that somehow if I could just see it in my mind and I want it bad enough and I envision it and I just aim for it, I will get it. But that's not what this prayer is all about.
Nor any of the prayers in the book. It's not it's all about God's will, not my will. People sometimes say that if you really feel that it's going to happen, then it's going to happen. But that's not true. Switching over to another prayer about suffering, it applies to all of the prayers in the book, really. Jesus Christ himself in the Garden of Gethsemane, he asked God, he said, can you let this cup pass from me? He asked God, he had faith. He was God himself, and yet the prayer was denied. He had to be crucified. That was the Father's will. So he certainly could visualize it if he wanted to. He could have he was God himself. So there's a case where the Father's will was that for the greater good, the Son had to be crucified. And so the execution, the crucifixion went on as scheduled, no matter what the prayer. Well, if that could happen to God's Son, then it could happen to us. If we visualize something and we want it to happen, that's why we always have to add that caveat, not my will, but your will.
It is, and it's so hard when people are suffering because sometimes we just don't think we can take it anymore.
Yeah, and the thing that the prayer that God always answers is, get me through this suffering. God may not always remove the suffering itself. He may not always. Sometimes he does. Many, many times he does. Someone informed me of a tremendous healing miracle this week. God does do that. He does. There are miracles that happen every day. But they're miracles because they're called miracles because they're exceptions to the rule. The rule generally is when something is happening, it may very well go forward, and God may not remove your particular cross. God said, "Take up your cross and follow me." So, but what he does is he always gives you the power to take up that cross and follow. He gives you the power to make it through the suffering with your faith intact, with your peace intact, without falling apart and collapsing. And that's very, very important.
I'm reminded of an example of St. Edith Stein, Teresa Benedicta of the Cross, not knowing exactly what she would be praying for, but as she held those children in her arms as she's going towards the camp. Sometimes, again, you can make it through it. God can get you through it. But as you said, the suffering doesn't always go away. It didn't go away for them. It didn't go away for Christ.
No, it didn't. It didn't. But this is something that Father Frank Pavone, who's the national director of Priests for Life, he used to tell me this, and that is that when you're in the middle of a storm, when you're driving, say, in your car and it's a storm, you don't try to figure out necessarily at that moment why the storm clouds arose, or how storms form, or any of the meteorological reasons. What you do is you concentrate on driving, on keeping the car straight on the road, driving slow, making sure that the car doesn't slip. You get through the storm. That's what you concentrate. Later on, then you could, if you're interested, find out about why you got caught in the storm. And God operates on that principle many, many times with us. If we're going through some kind of an emotional storm or a crisis, and we ask him, get me through the storm without crashing, that he'll always say yes to. Later on, sometimes much, much later on, we'll be able to discern what the reasons for that suffering was, what good God was able to pull out of that suffering.
I think another important prayer is the one that you talk about that has everything to do with perseverance, and that's the prayer of forgiveness, that, Lord, please forgive me.
A lot of people, they can't bring themselves to believe that God will forgive them. People have the opposite problem, too, as you know, in this society, but people don't even think they have to be forgiven. That's a whole other subject. Mm-hmm. But it is very true that people just can't come to believe what is really the most basic tenet of Christianity, and that is that if you're sorry and you try to turn over a new leaf, God will forgive you. Period. End of sentence. We can't bring ourselves to believe that, and so the wind-up is some of us go through life with all these, the guilt and the weight of all these past sins, and it warps them, it changes them, it makes them into different kinds of people, not for the better. And if they just, for once, believed and had faith in this one basic tenet that God will say, I forgive you. Mm-hmm. If you're sorry, period. That's all you have to do is be sorry. It's very easy. That's why Christ said, my yoke is easy, my burden is light. Why? Because Christianity is easy to follow the rules? No. It's easy because if you break the rules, God calls a do-over, or every single time. He says you're forgiven every single time if you confess and you're sorry.
Knowing that you're forgiven is such a tremendous gift, and it gives you peace. It's like knowing that your mortgage is going to be paid that month, or that your kids are home safe in their beds. There's something that comes about with knowledge that brings a peace to our minds. And I think that really is the importance of the next prayer, God, give me peace. Because I don't think we turn to him and give him over a lot of those things that just stress us out every single day.
It's amazing, if you spin the dials on the TV set, or you browse through the bookstore and you see all of these books that are going to help us relax and help us get rid of anxiety and deal with stress. And there's all these there's yoga, and there's so many things out there to help us with this. And meanwhile, people forget that the creator and the giver of peace, real peace, is God. God is a God of peace and order. And if we want to have peace in our lives, you can practice yoga till you're blue in the face. But the second, if you do that and you forget God's role in the peace process, then the second any kind of real problem comes along, you're going to be completely thrown off and you're going to be in turmoil anyway. Mm-hmm. So in many ways, those things that people do are just kind of false accommodations. That doesn't mean that anxiety programs, stress management programs aren't good. They are. If you pray to God for peace and you're a nervous kind of a person, he may very well send you towards those kinds of stress management exercises. But there's something a lot more than that will give you real peace, and that is what you just said, the knowledge that you are right with God and the peace that God bestows on you. In the Gospels, he says to his apostles, my peace I leave you, my peace I give you. Peace is something that God bestows on you. It's a reality that God gives to you. And so we have to remember that peace isn't just something that we manufacture ourselves.
It's an extension of that gift of faith, isn't it?
Yes, absolutely.
I'm struck by that story that you recount in that chapter concerning Peter, where he begins to sink because he loses faith.
Yeah, that's a famous, I'm not the first person to use that story of, the stormy night, and the apostles are out on the boat, and they see Jesus walking on the water, and Peter says, if it's you, Lord, tell me to come out to you. And so he says, come. And so he gets out of the boat, and he starts going towards the Lord, and he's walking on the water, going towards Jesus with the lightning and the thunder, and all of a sudden, he stops in his tracks. He looks around him, he gets all nervous, and he realizes, oh my goodness, what did I do? I'm in the middle of this storm, and he starts to sink right then. Why did he start to sink? Well, two reasons. First of all, because he stopped going towards the Lord. He stopped. He stopped in progressing in the spiritual life. And the second thing he did was he started looking around him at all the obstacles, all the turmoil, all the emotion, all the problems. He started looking at that instead of looking at Christ, which is where he should have been looking at. And this, obviously, this has great meaning for us because we all experience problems in our life. And what God is trying to tell us there is that if we always go towards Him and always look at Him, then He will get us through those problems. It doesn't mean that He's going to take away those problems, okay? But we will be able to get through them in peace, real peace.
And that, too, has its roots in something that just gnaws at all of us, and that's fear. And I know that, as you point out, the phrase fear not or be not afraid appears almost 144 times in sacred scripture. And we even heard from our late, great Holy Father, John Paul, to be not afraid. But I think we forget that to not be afraid, we need to pray that prayer of, please give me courage. Yes.
Yeah, and as you just pointed out, it's a command. Be not afraid. Cast away your anxieties. God doesn't just say, try to be brave. Try not to be afraid. He says, be not afraid. All right, that's a command. And so if God gives a command, He never gives a command unless He gives us the power to follow through on that command. And so that means that if we ask for courage, God will give it to us. And in fact, C.S. Lewis said that courage isn't just one of the virtues. It's the form of every virtue at its testing point. What he meant by that was that you need courage in order to perform all the other virtues. You can't be chaste. You can't be magnanimous. You can't be faithful. You can't be truthful. You can't be any of those things if you don't have the courage to overcome all the temptations that are going to come your way at some point that try to prevent you from performing those virtues. So courage is really very, very important. It's not just, give me the courage to get on this roller coaster or something, or give me this courage to face this bully. It's give me the courage to continue to be faithful to my wife, or not to lie, or not to do this, or it's the guts not to give in to temptation. And so in some ways, it's the most important of all the prayers in this book.
One of the reasons why I'm passing out 10 prayers God always says yes to so many of my friends is for each chapter, but in particular, I really like chapter 8, God give me wisdom. If I could just even give this particular chapter to anybody in those parish groups that go to Bible studies or they attend adult faith formation classes, I think you talk about the wisdom that is imparted by God as opposed to the book smarts and all the letters behind the name that seem to confuse so many of us in the church today.
And isn't that the truth? I mean, that chapter may not make me very popular to some of the theologians in some of these universities. But isn't it the truth that you run into either whether it's psychologists or theologians or in any field of endeavor, and these people have all these letters after their name, they've got all these degrees, they're so intelligent, and yet when it comes to the most basic common sense matters in life, they are completely wrong. And how does that happen? How do you study theology years and years and years, and then doubt the real presence, for instance,
right?
The Eucharist. How does that happen? It's just you're not because you're confusing book smarts with wisdom, and that's what a lot of these people unfortunately do.
Yeah, I agree with you 100%. I have come to realize over the years, having sat in those classes and try to perceive what I understood at the time to be real wisdom, that I learned more from women who had been attending daily Mass and served as sacristans in a church for 20 to 30 years. They had a deeper, more faith-filled life than the life that I was trying to strive for in doing all of this head stuff. I mean, they continue to want to learn about God, yet their faith is so rooted on that relationship they've developed in the sacraments.
Yeah, and that's what happens because, again, God wants everyone to be saved. It doesn't matter what your IQ is. And that's not an anti-intellectualism argument. Some people go the complete opposite way and they think that, it's not valuable at all to read all these books.
Right.
It is, because you read those books and you get a much deeper understanding of the profound mysteries. You could anyway.
Right.
But you don't necessarily need those books, any books. All you need is faith in God, and knowledge of the sacraments, let's say.
And
but anyway, yes, you're absolutely right.
What I like about how you approach it is because in all of the prayers that you offer up to God, and as in this one, God give me wisdom, you turn it over to God to impart that grace. He is always a part of the process. It isn't just me studying to learn more. It is God imparting upon me as I study the grace to understand Him and know Him better. And just as in the courage, it's not me attaining courage, it's God working through me because I'm open, because the disposition that I have, the paradigm that you've helped me to develop through this prayer, to allow Him to do the work to flourish inside of me.
Again, if you look through the bookstores, there's all the personal development books, all the books, the self-help books. A lot of them are very, very good, and a lot of them, teach us techniques for getting, for positive thinking and things like that. But a lot of them, unfortunately, are missing this big key, and that is that it's not about just self-help. It's about God's help. We leave God out of the equation, and we expect to be able to be all that we can be, and become these supermen and women, and it's just not going to happen. You may you may make some progress and become a different kind of person for a little while, but it's going to wind up being a phase. Unless God is incorporated into this whole self-help movement, it's just going to be another movement. It's not going to be something that's real and lasting.
And I think that's why the yes prayer is so essential. Anthony, I've made this a part of my daily prayer, not just in the morning, but also in the evening. I have made this a part of all the prayers that I pray, and I sincerely pray it. And I just think, thank you so much for articulating it.
Well, thank you. All I did with that prayer was I wanted to take all the prayer chapters that I wrote, and because people are so busy, we have such hectic lives, there's always a need for a good, short, concise summation. And I thought that if I was able to put all these 10 petitions in the form of one short, easy-to-remember prayer, that might be helpful, and I'm very happy that you like it. And I want as many people as possible to just start praying, because too many people out there begin and end their day without one prayer to the Lord. Mm. And if they begin to pray, things are going to happen. The lives are going to change. And that's what I wanted to do with this book, just sort of give people a little push.
A great message, Anthony.
Thank you very much.
With Anthony DeStefano, we've been going inside the pages of 10 prayers God always says yes to, divine answers to life's most difficult problems. To learn more about this book or to obtain a copy, go to 10prayers.com, Anthony DeStefano's website, or you can find it at any fine Catholic bookstore. To hear and download this discussion, along with many others, go to www.insidethepages.com. I'm your host, Kris McGregor. Join me next time for Inside the Pages, insights from today's most compelling authors.